Amy.
I'm Wendell.
And I'm Patrick.
And
This is
Yes,
But Why?
Podcast.
Thank you for coming to the studio and being able to have the experience. Some people, like, I know you're busy, you got a ton of shows going on, and even in San Antonio right now.
I do.
So,
I do have shows in San Antonio now, too.
Yeah, so that's like a ton of travel, and I wasn't sure how busy you'd be, but I just was like, let's check.
I appreciate it. I think, when you're getting ready to do a show, and then you lay out all the rehearsal stuff, you kind of go, oh my God, my schedule's going to be overwhelmed. And then you say, and then Friday, Saturday night when the show's running, I'm going to be really busy then, and it's going to be the drive down, in this case it was San Antonio. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But then, once the show starts, you go, oh look, when the show ends that next weekend, I'm free. Right. Invariably, you're booked immediately, right? You book something because you go, oh, that weekend's free. Why is that week? Oh yeah, the show's over.
Yeah.
Let me fill that time, and your wife goes, I'm sorry, did you forget that you had a Saturday night off for the first time? Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. I booked some stuff.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
And so I think August is completely gone now. So
oh boy,
yeah, she loves me.
Yeah,
that's lucky.
Really, she loves me. Pretty happy about that part. Oh, it's so true though. It's so embarrassingly true.
How long have you been married?
Wow. We got married in 1993.
Great.
Yeah, so It's been a couple days.
Couple?
Yeah, it feels like it. And we did a 20th anniversary tour of New Zealand.
Ooh.
So we flew out to New Zealand. 20 years together, not 20 years married, but 20 years together. Mm-hmm. And we started the North Island and went all the way down to the bottom of the South Island and had a blast. Had one of the best times of my life. I think she would have had fun too, but I was with her, so I'm not sure. Like, she probably would have traded for somebody, she could have traded up, but like a dog or a cat or something. But I did in a pinch.
Sure, any level of mute companion.
Exactly.
Is good. Yeah.
I do talk a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and also I was thinking, like, dog, yip. A cat, I enjoy a cat. It literally just stares at you in the face. You're like, you're right. I am great. I say to my cat all the time.
I've apparently had the worst cats in the world then.
They don't spend time with you?
No,
or they meow constantly?
And attack me for no reason. Yeah.
And this is before you had this beard, which is very cat attacky. Like if I were a cat, I'd be like, oh my God, can I grab that? Can I, like, rip it from your face? Like,
I don't know.
It's actually an anti-dog deterrent for, like, if you don't like dogs licking your face, get a beard. They don't like long hair either.
No.
So, yeah.
Oh, so what you're saying is I'm like a dog. Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, you got that comment.
Not good. Actually, I'm fine. Hold on.
I derailed this.
I was like, that's kind of how we do. I was like,
where's Old Zealand?
That is a good question. I've wondered that myself. Right? No, it's a legitimate question. I'm thinking there's somewhere in England called Zealand, right? There's gotta be.
I've never thought of that until just now. Just like, why isn't New Zealand? Where's Old Zealand, for the love of God? Or just Zealand.
There's some Brits listening to this right now going, it's right here! We live right here! Come look! Sorry.
Google it. We don't Google.
Don't Google it.
Oh, we don't Google? I'm fine with that.
Nah, forget it. Who cares?
It's constantly wrong. Is this the secondary name of the podcast?
Constantly wrong. No, when I re-listen to these, I literally do research on what we're talking about, and if I think the audience is going to react, I'll put little notes in the bottom of the notes.
Aww. Like fact-checking. You do a little fact-checking and drop the notes in.
Or just things where it's like, this is who we meant. And it's like a picture of an actor. Or like we had this long discussion about like what are they called? Okay, they're called pocket rockets, but they're not what you think they are. They were little listening devices. They were like the original MP3 players, but they weren't MP3 players because it was before tapes.
Yeah.
So it was like these tiny little like Debbie Gibson like things that you stuck in like a single that you stuck inside a thing that was this big, and then you could listen to it. And this is before tapes and Walkmans and all this stuff, or probably not after tapes before CDs.
Right.
So I'm a kid, and Debbie Gibson is out, and I have this thing, and we had this long discussion about it in one of the podcasts, and none of us could figure out what it was, and we refused to research it. We finished the podcast, all of us got on our phones to find it. We couldn't, even after that.
Not real.
And so it was like, forget it, that must not be a thing, and I wrote a note because I was like, this is real. And so then when I went back to my notes to like put the podcast together, I was like, I'm finding this thing. I don't know what it is. So I like researched like all the words I could think of, like mini cassette player in 1982, like all sorts of little detail things that I remember, like Whitney Houston singles, you know. So I was like, okay, because I remember having a Whitney Houston one. So I was like, okay, this existed. I make up a lot of stuff, but I didn't make this up. Does that ever happen to you? Do you ever like tell a story from your childhood and then someone from your family calls you out and goes like, no, that didn't happen?
So let me just say,
yay.
So I love telling stories, and I kind of found storytelling through No Shame, right? I heard the Moth podcast and I went apeshit crazy for it, and then I started going to No Shame, and I would just tell a story. And there's nothing worse than a bunch of stand-ups coming out to do an open mic, right? This is an open stage. I call it an open stage. No Shame's an open stage. Screw them. But come out, and I would get up and tell a 5-minute story that was sad. And then they're like, I don't want to follow that shit, right? So sure enough, I started going last. Not to headline, but to be polite. So I just go last at the end of the night. And at some point, my wife actually came out and started watching me do this thing. And I said to her during the week, I'm going to tell this story this weekend at No Shame. And I start to practice just running it through, and it's a story of how we first met. And I get to a point in the story, and she goes, you know that's wrong. And this is the point where I believe the only way that this story is true is that she was drunk in the story. And I say, and you were drunk, and you came over to my sister's house, and you showed her this Playgirl with this guy named Horst, who was hung down to his knee, and yes, you were drunk. And she says, I wasn't drunk. I said, fine. You come to No Shame with me. I'll tell the story. You correct me when we get to that point. We get to that point. She shouts out, you're wrong. That's not how it goes. I get her up on stage with me. And then I say, fine, you tell the rest of the fucking story. And I sit down. And she tells the rest of the story. It was the coolest thing we'd ever done as a couple, in my opinion. In her opinion, I think she wanted to kill me. But it was so cool. It was right there is the disagreement, right there on stage. Right. We're just going to disagree. She was not drunk. Yes, she was drunk. I don't know what the truth is at this point. It's been too many years, but it's great.
Counterpoint, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You don't know if you were drunk or not. I could tell you 1,000 stories, and I'd be like, I don't know if I was drunk. Maybe I was. Who knows?
She walked 2 blocks with a Playgirl in College Station in the 1980s. Right? Her life was at risk carrying a Playgirl, right? Pictures of naked men. No. This doesn't happen in College Station, right? She comes to my sister's house. I've never met this woman. She walks in the door. She finds my sister. She says, look, his name is Horst. Folds the magazine up, walks back out the door, goes back to her house. And I look at my sister and I say, did she come all this way to tell you a joke? She goes, yeah. I go, what's her name? I want to meet her. Right. It was the middle of the day. I love this woman. I was like, this is the thing. Anyway, sorry.
Maybe she just needed a walk, or... I mean, it was the middle of the day?
It was the middle of the day.
See, if it were like 2 a.m., I'd be like, all right, you're right, she was drunk. But it was like 2 p.m., like, I don't know.
It's College Station.
Before...
What else is there to do but drink?
Also, before cell phones, like, there were a lot of weird things that I did, and there were a lot of long walks I took to get to friends' houses just to communicate. Because, you know, I remember I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't, have a way to communicate with somebody. I mean, I'm sure either I lived at a house that maybe had a phone, maybe didn't. You know, there were definitely times in my 20s when it was all like, yeah, we could pay for the phone or we could pay for rent. What do we think, everyone? Rent? Okay, great. And then the phone in the house would just turn off. And it was like, who am I calling? You're here. Like, if I wanted to go, I'll walk 3 blocks down the road to my other friend's apartment and go like, hey, come over. Like, or we're coming over. Oh, we're here now. Like, whatever, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. Back in the day, there was a lot more traveling we'd do for no reason. Now it's like, I wouldn't walk a block without being like, where am I? What's going on? Let me GPS this. Is there traffic? Is there rain? What's going on?
Were my best friends just best friends because they were geographically close to me? Was that? I guess that's probably how that happened. Yeah.
Yes, that's how all of us were ever friends with anyone. I mean, did you guys go to?
Yeah.
Because you guys went to public school for a while, right?
No,
I mean, I know you were in
Military,
the Army, but weren't the same people? But I mean,
I was Army.
Were the same people that you hung around with at the bases the same kids all the time?
No, so we had like a 2-3 year cycle on our friends. So it was like we'd move every 2 years or 3 years, and only one of the friends that I see, he was in Germany, and then like a year later he moved to Wichita Falls, and like we had that moment of like, do I know you? Like, are you that kid that we hung out? Because you lived right down the road.
Yeah.
So
do you have this background of living in Germany for a period of time, and yet you're an American citizen? Oh, you are? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Let's talk about that. Oh, wait, we lived on the same base? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, were you a kid with military parents, or were you in the Army?
I was in the Army.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
I ran out of money for college in '85.
Yep.
And I was pretty desperate. So I joined the Army. And they had a really nice program because they were desperate, too. It was like a mutual desperation thing. They needed bodies. I was a body. I joined up. They gave me 2-year program with 2 years promise of college afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So it would let me finish out undergraduate, and I milked the crap out of that to get through graduate school. So
Great.
Worked well. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. But it cost me 2 years.
But there wasn't a major active war at that time period.
There was not.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's
Right?
weird. A couple of my friends and I, we still struggle with this concept because people call us veterans, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we struggle with that word because it was peacetime.
Yeah.
There was no risk. We just got in the Army, and
Cold War.
it was the Cold War. And I was in Germany, so it was
okay.
cold. So it was the double cold. But it was just really, no.
Which bases were you at?
I was in Bamberg.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was beautiful. So it has a castle. It has the only pope buried outside. I know, right? Outside of Rome. So we had some things.
Yeah.
We had nice things there. And it was beautiful. And I get to travel most of Europe.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yes.
It's all right there.
Hard to convince the 18-year-olders around me that we should leave the post or do things. Like, I would catch a train every chance I got on the weekends. If I was off, I was going somewhere. Because you could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back just because I know it's so different than what I remember.
Oh, yeah.
Just because, like, I was over there around the same time period. So, 3 countries have actually changed names by now. No longer Soviets exist in that area,
right?
You know, so so like going Berlin, you know, was a totally different thing because we did I was a young kid, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts at the time, so we did the cross over the wall and deal with the Soviets, you know, and then cross back. With the machine guns and
that's right, because you were there while the wall was up.
Yeah, it was real cool.
So weird.
I was there. I wasn't in Berlin, but I was there during the wall period.
Yeah.
And I was not I was a little cerebral. I don't drink. I didn't do drugs. I didn't go to the brothels. So I didn't relate to any of the other kids that were in. I wasn't an officer because I hadn't finished, undergraduate.
Right.
And there was a weird moment where somebody in one of the units we supported shot somebody.
Oh, wow.
As they were escaping into Soviet-occupied territories.
I knew about the opposite way. I didn't know. Yeah.
Right. We shot somebody because the only justification would be that they knew something and they were trying to get it across to the other side.
Yeah.
So we shoot this guy, and I have a crisis of conscience. I literally am like, I did sign up to be in the Army, but I didn't plan on shooting anybody in the back.
Right.
Didn't think that would be something I would ever have to do. Certainly if they're running away, I probably wouldn't fire at them first. But I went and met with, I don't know what else to call him. He was in charge of the security unit, the intelligence group. And I met with him and his partner. I won't use their names, but they were in there, and they're just intelligence people. And I go in there. One of them's a Catholic. Like, I see him at Mass. So I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. And this is my lunch hour. And I'm bearing my soul to a guy who can get me court-martialed, and I'm feeling pretty crazy.